All them says was bound to jail. Had no money to go to bail. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on. I'm gonna board that big greyhound and spread the love from town to town. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on.
My name is G. Park. I'm the Executive Director of Innocence Project New Orleans. And today is the International Wrongful Conviction Day. We are here today to urge the Louisiana Parole Board and Governor John Bel Edwards to do the most courageous thing by granting clemency to Louisiana's death row inmates. 12 people have been exonerated from Louisiana's death row. 12 people. So it's 12 lives, right? Were in which the state was going to kill them, but they were factually innocent. Our first speaker this afternoon is Raymond Blanks. Raymond was in prison. Raymond was in prison for 38 years for a murder he did not commit. He was exonerated and freed from this courthouse on November 17th, 2022.
I was arrested in 1983, and I was brought to the 5th District in a police car. I never had really been in a police car before. I didn't have the resources to afford proper representation. So I was appointed a state lawyer. I knew nothing about criminal law. When I got found guilty, which the prosecutors sought the death penalty, however, the jury actually said that we're going to let him live, but he can go to prison for the rest of his life. I went to a former plantation, which is Angola State Penitentiary, and I began to serve my sentence. I did everything that my ancestors did along that journey. I picked cotton and every other earth-bearing seed that you can possibly think of. I was fortunate to receive a theology degree, and I would minister to men who were on death row, and I saw in their eyes what was in my eyes when I was going through my trial proceedings. Who knows who may be innocent or may be guilty? But are you willing to kill 59 or 64 or whatever the count is, people, and one of them are innocent? I truly believe in my heart that all of them should be delivered of their sentence. I've always dreamed to do this, and I did it. Thank you all so much. Freedom!
Yusuf Salam was one of 5 Black and Latino teenagers wrongly accused and convicted of rape in the so-called Central Park 5 case.
You see, we live in a system where we're told and taught from a very young age that you're going to be dead or in jail before you reach the age of 21. I've never met a person who's ever decided for their life that they wanted to be dead before they reach the age of 21. But what we are contending with is a system that is alive and sick. It's a system that looks at the color of your skin and deems you guilty for it. When I was 15, 34 years ago, I was run over by the spike wheels of justice. They looked at the color of our skin. In fact, our future president, Donald Trump, took out a full-page ad calling for the state to kill us. And so I would have never been on death row. Because Donald Trump took out that ad, others joined in the party. And in the party, they said, well, why don't we just take the eldest one, who was Corey Wise, and hang him from a tree? Why don't we take the others and strip them naked and horsewhip them. This is what we were up against. You may say, well, this is just an isolated incident. But we represent the microcosm of the macrocosm of cases just like ours. And it behooves us right here, right now, in this very city, to be at the forefront. And so I'm calling on government to be the leaders in the change that we seek.
Our next speaker is Jason Flum. He is a very successful music industry executive, the host of the widely acclaimed Wrongful Conviction podcast, and a big-hearted, righteous philanthropist who has been integral to the innocence movement.
The question I have is, why do we kill people to show that killing people is wrong? Innocent or guilty. We shouldn't be in the business of killing people. No other Western country has had the death penalty for generations. And I'm going to take out my phone here because I just made a little note. The only countries that execute more people, their own citizens, than we do, are China, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and Egypt. And then the United States. That's a hell of a list. As you heard earlier, in the state of Louisiana, not only have 3 people been found innocent on death row for every 7 that have been executed, but also innocent people have been executed, and we know that. And we know that there are innocent people on death row right now. Fortunately, we have a good governor here. Governor John Bel Edwards has done righteous things. He continues to do righteous things. He's been freeing people, granting clemency in a way that I wish other governors would follow suit. And he has the opportunity now to help alleviate this awful problem with these 57 or so, I think it's 57 people that are on death row at this moment. And he faces fierce opposition, as we know. But the fact is, we're hoping and we're calling on him and we're begging him, turn to his faith, turn to his conscience, turn to his soul, which we know is good, and find the strength to exercise the power that you have and get the parole board to do their thing and recommend these cases for clemency so that he can grant them.
Sister Helen Prejean. She is the leading advocate against death penalty in our country and for our century, really.
What made us ever think that we were going to be able to set up a system of very fallible human beings who are going to decide who deserved to die of all those who commit crimes? What made us think we could do that? I kind of know a little bit of history because I've been in the history. And it was in the 80s, and the political rhetoric took over of being, we could all say it, tough on crime. People ran for office, tough on crime. I'm going to be tougher than you. I'm going to be tougher than you. I'm going to kill more people than you. We had prosecutors in Louisiana who ran for office bragging about how many death penalties they got. How could we not but fail when the Supreme Court legalized death and there are 2 fallacies in the way it set up the death penalty in the Gregg v. Georgia decision of 1976. One, they gave us an impossible criteria by which we're going to decide who dies. And you know what it was? Not everybody commits murder, only the worst of the worst. And those are the words I use, worst of the worst. Then that same decision of Gregg coupled it with complete discretionary power to prosecutors to seek death or not. It ends up being in their hands of single individuals. I remember 2 innocent people who've been executed. Dobie Gillis Williams, here from Louisiana. He had an IQ of 65, and he was executed. All-white jury. His lawyer telling him, no, I think the jury's going to be all right. And what I discovered first as I learned about the system is that I thought, well, the appeals courts are going to set it all straight. Look what happened at his trial. Look what happened to his due process. They gonna set it straight. And I didn't know. I didn't know that they're all for it's like they put WD-40 on all the rails and they just make it impossible for you to get new evidence in if you've already been found guilty. Write those letters to Governor Edwards now. Tell him to seize this moment in history and do the right thing. Use the power entrusted into him, into his hands, to do the right thing. Anybody you leave on death row when you go, depending on who our next governor is, could be killed. Let's fight. Let's struggle. Keep learning, keep connecting. We're going to end this thing.
Kalia Ali. She's the daughter of Muhammad Ali, the boxing champion and civil rights advocate. Kalia is a fierce advocate for racial justice and criminal legal reform in her own right. She's a fashion designer, an author, and a philanthropist who always speaks up for what is right, just as her father did.
I feel like I'm continuing where he left off. I'm continuing a fight that we absolutely cannot afford to lose. There's nothing I'm going to say that's going to be as compelling or as articulate as some of the speeches that you've heard here today. So I'm really here in the spirit of my father, with absolute gratitude. On his tombstone, my favorite quote of his is marked, and it says, "Service is the rent we pay for living here on earth." And I think that sums up who we are and what we're doing and why we're here today. The other poem that he had was Me, We, which was basically saying we're all tied and inextricably bound to each other. So with that in mind, we have to continue the fight. I'm so proud to do the fight with the man behind me, who's become my life partner that I like to call Baflamet Ali, Mr. Jason Flom. And I know every day when we wake up and this fight is a 24-hour battle, that, I'm doing something that my father would be doing if he was standing right here. So just my blessings to all of you. Let's keep up the fight. I'm in the fight with you. He's in the fight with you. And let's not give up. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Sharif Kuzan. Sharif was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced right here in Orleans Parish to death. Sharif spent 3 years in Louisiana's death row for a crime he did not commit.
I don't use the term wrongful conviction. In my case, I was framed. I'm also number 77. That's a number that I'll carry with me for the rest of my life. And that's the 77th person to have been exonerated from America's death row. At the tender age of 16, when some of you were getting ready for a prom or just doing a natural thing a 16-year-old would do, I was fighting for my life for a crime I didn't commit. On the night of the murder, I was playing basketball on videotape. A murder happened in the French Quarters. Some black men did it. Some black kids did it. In this building, during my trial, when I had the other black kids that was playing with and the other black kids playing against, bailiff goes out, comes back in, Yana knew Michael Dawson in the hallway. We called Jamal Hardy. We called Michael Smith. None of them were in the hallway. Guess where they were? The prosecutor had taken those black kids and put them around the corner in his office while the trial was going on so they could not testify that I was with them on the night of the murder. Do you hear what I'm telling you? Do you hear what I'm telling you? And I was a 16-year-old kid. This is wrongful conviction day to hear these stories. This is not a game. When you look at these men and women back here, this is not a game. Talk to them. Now, I know everybody on death row is not innocent. But when my 17-year-old self was on death row with those other men, who do you think was instrumental in raising me mentally? Think about some of you have 16-year-old kids. What do you think they will be going through sitting in a cell on death row for a crime that they were framed of? So those men that we're fighting for on death row, Tracy Lee. Tracy been up there over 25 years. If it wasn't for Tracy, I'd probably have lost my mind. Rogers Lacaze, I grew up with Roger. If it wasn't for Roger, I probably lost my mind. I can go on and on. Dan Bryce, stand up, Dan. I was on death row with Dan. If it wasn't for Dan, I probably lost my mind. So I'm not asking you for mercy. I'm asking you to do something that's right.
Senator Royce DePlacis is truly a champion of the people. He's a leading voice for access to quality education, healthcare, improved infrastructure for all of our communities, and is a fighter for racial justice and for all rights in the criminal legal system.
We have a justice system where people walk in and out of this building every day, where it says state of Louisiana versus person X or person Y. And that person is either guilty or not guilty. But we have a system where we have an organization called the Innocence Project. We have an appeals process. We have a post-conviction process. We even have a process in place where you can appeal for compensation for being wrongfully convicted. So how can you have a system that acknowledges fault, but also have finality? But also have finality in saying we will put someone to death. Those two things can't coexist. So I'm saying if it doesn't appeal to your moral conscience, let it at least appeal to your common sense. The death penalty has always been ineffective because it is not a deterrent to crime. It has always been inefficient because of the amount of money and waste of resources that it costs. And it has always been immoral. Amongst the most stains that we have in this state from a policy standpoint, this is the most abhorrent, especially in a state that claims to be pro-life. It would be wrong of me to come here and not acknowledge the pain that victims have experienced and the pain that victims do experience. Today's event, today's speech, and what we're talking about, what we're doing right here today is not in disregard of victims and victims' rights. I want to make that very clear. But I believe it was Brian Stevenson who said that just because a person may deserve death, it doesn't give the state the right to kill. And we have an opportunity now. We still have time to turn this around. There are at least 50 individuals right now in the state of Louisiana. And we still have a governor right now who has acknowledged that this is something that we need to turn around. So my appeal is to the governor of this state for at least the next few months, and to the parole board to do the right thing. Do the right thing.